In the quiet hills of Connecticut lies a forgotten town with a dark secret. In the autumn of 1854, 37 people vanished without a trace, men, women, and children swallowed by the land itself. The town blamed wolves, cold weather, even bandits. But that was a lie. Because the last place every one of those missing souls was seen, was the old Hartwell Mill. And that mill never stopped running. Not in storms. Not in winter. Not even when there was no grain to grind. So before we go on, let me ask, are you alone right now? Because after this story, you might wish you weren't. If you're ready to uncover the truth behind one of the oldest unsolved mysteries in American history, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Tell me in the comments, what state are you listening from? I want to see just how far this dark tale will travel. Now, let's go back to where it all began. Part 1. The Stones That Never Slept. It was the fall of 1854 when young Timothy Phelps stumbled into town, white as a ghost, his boots soaked and eyes wide with terror. He said he saw something by Copper Creek, something moving near the mill, dragging what looked like a body. That morning changed everything. Millbrook, Connecticut, was a picture of peace. A small New England town, tucked between rolling hills and thick forests. About 800 people lived there, hard-working folks, farmers, blacksmiths, shopkeepers. People knew their neighbors and trusted them. Life followed the rhythm of nature and the turning of the seasons. At the heart of town was Copper Creek, a fast-moving stream that powered the lifeblood of Millbrook's economy, the mills. There were 3 sawmills, 2 tanneries, and a blacksmith shop, but none more important than the Hartwell brothers' grist mill. Since 1832, it had ground wheat and corn into flour for half the county. The mill's giant water wheel turned day and night. Locals joked you could set your watch by the rumble of those stones. But not everyone joked. Some noticed the stones never stopped turning. Not even on Sundays. Not even during storms. Not even when no one brought grain. The mill stood 4 stories tall, made of thick timber and gray stone. Its windows looked like dark eyes, always watching. Inside, the gears and belts moved like a living thing, creaking, grinding, whispering. It smelled of flour, oil, and old wood. That scent clung to your clothes and skin, a mark that you'd worked inside. The main grinding stones had been brought all the way from France, burr stone, strong and sharp, better than anything found in the States. The mill had once belonged to Solomon Hartwell, the father of Josiah and Elias. He was a man of faith, known for honesty, strict rules, and kindness. He never worked on Sundays and gave money to the local church. His portrait still hung in the mill office, eyes cold and watchful. But Solomon was gone now. And his sons were nothing like him. Josiah, the elder brother, was a giant, 6 feet 3 and built like a barn. His hair, slicked back with grease, was going gray at the temples. His eyes were cold and slate gray, the kind that made your stomach twist. He handled the business. Cold, sharp, ruthless. If you owed Josiah money, you'd better pay on time. He'd take your grain, your tools, even your farm if he had to. There were stories of him breaking a man's fingers for trying to cheat the scales. Elias, 6 years younger, was his opposite. Thin, twitchy, and always talking to himself. His hands never stopped moving, fixing, building, adjusting. He had studied machinery at the Sheffield Scientific School before his father's death pulled him back to Millbrook. Elias lived for machines. He didn't care about people, just gear ratios and grinding speeds. Some said he could feel when a belt was off balance just by standing in the room. Others whispered that he talked to the machines, and they answered. The brothers never married. They're married to the mill, people joked. But no one laughed when the brothers were nearby. They lived together in their father's old house, a once beautiful home now choked with vines and rot. The white pillars were stained yellow. The windows were dark. No lights. No laughter. No visitors. Josiah came into town every Thursday at 2 sharp. He'd walk down Main Street in heavy boots, nodding once or twice, but never smiling. Elias almost never left the mill. When he did, He looked like a man afraid of open sky, fast, nervous, eyes darting. Most folks in Millbrook learned not to ask too many questions. The Hartwell Mill was the town's engine. It gave them flour, it gave them work, and it gave them just enough fear to keep quiet. But then came the vanishings. It started with a trapper named Orson Pike. Then a young widow. Then a farmer and his son. Then 3 children who went picking apples. All seen last heading near Copper Creek. By November, 37 names had been recorded. Not a body was ever found. The sheriff searched. The townsfolk prayed. They blamed wolves, highwaymen, even a traveling preacher with strange eyes. But deep down, everyone wondered the same thing. Why were all the missing last seen near the Hartwell Mill? And why did the mill keep running with no grain in sight? Timothy Phelps hadn't meant to get involved. He was just a stable boy helping bring supplies down the Copper Creek Road. But he saw something that morning, something terrible. A figure in the fog, dragging something heavy. A flash of white fabric, like a dress. And behind it, the sound of grinding stones, louder than ever. He ran. Now, as the mist settles back over Copper Creek and the townspeople whisper behind closed doors, a truth begins to rise from the shadows. Something in the Hartwell Mill is hungry. And the stones will not stop. To be continued in Part 2. Want to know what Timothy really saw that morning? Don't miss Part 2 of the Hartwell Mill. Hit like, subscribe, and comment your state below, because this story, it's just getting started. Would you like me to continue with Part 2 now? The Hartwell Mill. Part 2. Dust and Disappearances. 1,000 words, simple English for American audience. The Hartwell Mill was the beating heart of Millbrook's success. It employed 12 men, millwrights, grain handlers, and teamsters, and supported dozens more. Farmers relied on it to process their grain. Bakers depended on its flour. Merchants made profits from the trade it brought in. Everyone knew Hartwell flour. Fine, white, and consistent. Orders came from all across the region, Providence, New York, even as far as Boston. The summer of 1854 had been especially kind. Wheat fields shimmered gold in the sun, and corn grew tall and thick. The orchards promised barrels of apples. Millbrook celebrated that 4th of July like never before. Fireworks from Hartford, a brass band from Waterbury. Laughter, music, dancing. There was talk of progress and hope everywhere. The railway was expected by 1856. The town approved money for a new schoolhouse. And a doctor from Boston, Drive, Elias Thornton, was considering opening a practice in town. It felt like nothing could go wrong. People knew each other. The mayor's gout, the widow Henderson's letters from a traveling salesman, the Temperance Society's arguments at Garrett's Tavern, all of it was town gossip. Folks courted under careful eyes at church socials and harvest dances. Life moved in rhythms, planting, tending, harvesting, and the long snowy winters when the mill ran non-stop, grinding stored grain for the whole valley. But under the joy and growth, there were whispers, quiet stories from long ago. The oldest residents remembered what their grandparents had said about the bend in Copper Creek. The Mohegan people once avoided that very spot. They believed the water ran backward there on certain nights. Others told of strange lights dancing in the gorge during the new moon. And sometimes, when the fog was thick and the millstones ground on, folks swore they heard something in the sound, not the creek, not the wind. Something else. Most brushed it off. Old legends. Superstitions. The past didn't matter in a town moving toward the future. But everything started to change that fall. It began with strangers. That alone was strange. Millbrook didn't get many visitors. And these weren't traveling salesmen or musicians. They came alone, didn't stay long, and left no trace. The first was Jacob Morse, a peddler known in town for selling tin goods and miracle tonics. He arrived on September 15 with his wagon and usual charm. Mary Wadsworth, who ran the boarding house, remembered he offered her a tonic for her husband's rheumatism. He said he was going to the Hartwell Mill before nightfall. Mary warned him, "Those brothers don't take kindly to peddlers." Jacob laughed. I've dealt with tougher than 2 millers. That was the last anyone saw him. 3 days later, his wagon was found abandoned on a logging road 2 miles out of town. The horse stood calmly, still hitched. The wagon was untouched. Goods, money, everything. But Jacob was gone. Constable Rufus Baldwin noticed something odd. A fine coating of flour dust covered everything. Almost like someone had dumped a full sack of meal over the wagon. Then came the second disappearance. Thomas Griswold, a 22-year-old from nearby Copper Falls, had been courting Alice Putnam, the minister's daughter. On the night of September 22, he left her house after dinner, promising to return Sunday. He said he'd take the creek path to save time. Alice later sobbed to her father, "I begged him to stay on the main road. He said the moon was bright and he wasn't afraid." Thomas never made it home. His family searched for days. All they found was his hat, caught in brambles near the tail race, the channel that carries water away from the mill wheel. No blood, no struggle, just the hat, and more of that strange flour dust on the leaves. Then a third person vanished. Clarence Hooker, a traveling photographer. He was taking pictures of local mills for a Hartford newspaper. He'd spoken to several townspeople. Then he was gone. The fourth and fifth disappearances happened on the same night, a couple named Sherman, returning from visiting family in New Haven. By now, the whispers were growing louder. Constable Baldwin, a calm and serious man who'd once served in the Mexican War, started connecting dots. He pinned a map on his desk. Each red mark showed where someone had last been seen. Every mark sat near the Hartwell Mill. Each person vanished between dusk and dawn. And at every scene, there was that eerie dust. So, on October 3, Baldwin rode to the mill. It was just past noon. The stones were grinding, as always. He found Josiah Hartwell in the office, surrounded by ledgers. Josiah barely looked up. "Afternoon, Rufus," he said. "Come about the missing folks, I expect." 5 people gone in 3 weeks, Baldwin said. "All last seen nearby. Dangerous roads this time of year," Josiah replied calmly. "Creeks running high. Man could fall, get swept away. Currents are tricky near the gorge. Bodies don't always show up." Baldwin studied the man's cold gray eyes. "Mind if I take a look around? Mill's a dangerous place for those who don't know it," Josiah said. "Wouldn't want the law getting hurt. Elias is particular about strangers." "I'll be careful," Josiah shrugged. "Suit yourself. Just stay off the grinding floor." "And Rufus," Baldwin turned, "better solve this soon. All this talk, bad for business. People might take their grain elsewhere." Baldwin searched the mill for 2 hours. Grain sacks, flour barrels, machinery humming like a living thing. Elias lurked in the shadows, silent and twitchy. His eyes followed Baldwin everywhere. His hands never stopped moving, tightening a belt, adjusting a valve, twisting a lever. Just as Baldwin was leaving, he saw something that made his stomach twist. The massive grinding stones, the heart of the mill, were turning. But the grain hopper above them was empty. They were running dry, stone grinding against stone. "Why are the stones running empty?" Baldwin asked. Elias stepped from the shadows like a ghost. His mouth twitched. Maybe it was a smile. "Cleaning," he said, voice soft as dry leaves. "Got to keep them sharp. Got to keep them hungry." That night, Baldwin couldn't sleep. He told his wife he was checking on a prowler at Widow Davenport's place. But in truth, he went to the hill above the mill. He wanted to watch it after dark. The mill roared all night. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the traffic. And what Baldwin saw next, what passed through those mill doors, would haunt him until his dying breath. To be continued in Part 3. Would you like me to continue with Part 3? The Hartwell Mill, Part 3, The Fog and the Witness. Baldwin counted 3 wagons that night, each one creeping toward the mill between midnight and 3 a.m. They moved without lanterns, their wheels muffled by layers of burlap, their drivers silent as the grave. The wagons were heavy, canvas-covered, and left empty an hour later. Baldwin didn't stop them. He only watched from the trees, heart pounding, too afraid to move. But it was what happened at 3:30 that truly chilled him to the marrow. By late October, 37 souls had vanished from the roads around Millbrook. No trace, no witnesses, just vanished like mist. Fear wrapped the town tight. People stopped traveling alone. Farmers went into town in groups, rifles slung over their shoulders. The stagecoach line hired an extra guard. Households barred doors at sunset and kept lanterns burning till morning. The Hartwell Mill ground on. Day and night, Reverend Ezra Putnam called for a week of prayer and fasting. A few old families, those with roots going back to the Pequot Wars, began leaving offerings at the ancient Indian marker stone near Copper Creek: corn cakes, feathers, tobacco. Just like during the troubles of 1793. But mostly, people just stayed away from Mill Road after dark. Except one boy. Timothy Phelps was 16, son of the blacksmith, headstrong, curious, and smitten with Jenny Lockwood, whose family farm lay beyond the mill on the far side of Copper Creek. His parents had warned him, sternly, not to go out after sunset. But love made him reckless. He'd been sneaking out for weeks, taking the long way around through the woods. But on the night of October 28, a thick sea fog rolled inland from the Sound. It came like a ghost's breath, silent, dense, swallowing light and sound alike. Timothy thought the fog was a gift, a cover. He decided to take the shortcut past the mill. The world became whispers and shapes. He moved quietly, sticking close to the trees, heart thudding in his ears. The mill loomed ahead, dark, massive, its water wheel turning like a giant clock hand in the night. Then he heard something, muffled voices. Urgent, a scraping sound, like something heavy dragged across wood. He crept closer. Yellow lamplight spilled from the mill's loading dock, cutting through the fog. Shadows moved. 2 men. The Hartwell brothers. But they weren't handling grain. Not this time. Timothy squinted. The bundles they carried off the wagon were wrapped in canvas. Long, limp, wrong-shaped. Then one bundle slipped. Elias caught it awkwardly, but not before an arm slipped free. Pale, stiff, human, Timothy's breath caught. He staggered back, snapped a twig underfoot. Josiah's head snapped up. Someone's watching, he said, his voice clear as glass in the fog. The fog's thick, Elias muttered, hands frozen mid-movement. No one travels tonight. Someone is. Timothy ran. He didn't look back. Branches tore his shirt. Mud soaked his boots. His lungs burned. He sprinted the whole way to the blacksmith's shop, collapsing in the doorway, gasping like a dying animal. His father, Samuel Phelps, found him there, muddy, bleeding, shaking. Timothy told the story, breathless and wild. Samuel wouldn't have believed it, except for one thing. In his son's clenched fist was a scrap of blood-stained canvas. By sunrise, Samuel was on horseback, galloping toward Hartford to bring the county sheriff. Timothy went to Constable Baldwin. By noon, a posse of 20 armed men had surrounded the Hartwell Mill. Josiah stepped out for his usual Thursday visit to the general store, and found rifles aimed square at him. "Gentlemen," he said calmly, eyes scanning the crowd, "to what do I owe this honor?" Sheriff Cornelius Wadsworth stepped forward. A man who had seen both war and worse. "Josiah Hartwell," he said, "you and your brother are under arrest. Suspicion of multiple murders." Josiah raised an eyebrow. "Murder? Who exactly do you think we've killed?" "We'll start with the 37 missing folks." "Missing doesn't mean dead," Josiah replied. "Show me a body." "We intend to," the sheriff said. "Starting with your mill." For the first time, a flicker of something, uncertainty, maybe calculation, crossed Josiah's face. "You got a warrant?" "Don't need one. Not with this many people gone. I've authority to search every damn building in this county." Josiah sighed. Elias won't like strangers touching his machinery. Then he best cooperate. The grinding room looked normal enough at first glance. The massive millstones turned slowly. The air hung heavy with grain dust. But Baldwin checked the hopper. Empty. Yet the stones kept turning. "Shut it down," Sheriff Wadsworth ordered. Elias, standing at the top of the stairs, shook his head violently. Can't. The stones must feed. Stop it, Wadsworth barked, or I'll smash the whole damn mechanism. It was Josiah who finally gave a quiet nod. With great reluctance, Elias pulled the lever. The mill wheel groaned and stopped. The silence felt wrong, like something vital had just died. Raise the runner stone, the sheriff ordered. The brothers froze. That stone weighs 2 tons, Josiah said. Takes special gear. Then get started. It took 3 hours. Ropes. Pulleys. Men sweating and cursing. As the massive stone lifted, a smell filled the room, sickly sweet and putrid, like rotted meat and wet grain. Men gagged. Some ran outside to vomit. Beneath the stone, horror waited. The stationary bedstone had been altered. Instead of flower channels, it had deep grooves, leading to a central hole. Blood-caked, bone-filled, crushed fingers, teeth, scraps of cloth, a flattened wedding ring, a cracked pocket watch stopped at 3:17. Someone whispered, "Dear God." But it got worse. The central hole led to a chute. That chute led into the foundation. The sheriff ordered it opened. What they found were chambers, carved into solid rock. Some empty, others stacked with bones. Dozens. Sheriff Wadsworth would later write, "We recovered partial remains of at least 43 individuals. Possibly more. The bones had been sorted. Some ground to powder. Others laid neatly in rows. On the walls, carved by a nervous hand, were tallies. Names. Dates. The oldest read, 1834. The Hartwell brothers had been doing this for 20 years. 20 years of grinding more than grain. To be continued in part 4. Let me know when you're ready for the next part. The Hartwell Mill, part 4, the trial. The trial of Josiah and Elias Hartwell became the most talked about event in Connecticut history. From New Haven to Boston, papers ran front-page stories with headlines like, "Mill of Bones, the Devil's Brothers, Hartwell Men on Trial. Evil fed the stones. The courthouse in Hartford overflowed. Farmers, widows, merchants, and city folk packed into pews meant for church services. Extra benches were built, but still dozens stood. Some climbed windows just to peek inside. Everyone wanted to see the 2 men who had turned a mill into a slaughterhouse." Josiah Hartwell wore a clean black coat and polished boots. He smiled calmly at the crowd. Spoke clearly. Carried himself like a professor or banker, not a killer. Elias, on the other hand, looked like a ghost. Gaunt, pale, eyes sunken. He barely spoke. Sometimes he trembled so badly that court officers had to steady him. Once, when a witness mentioned the smell under the stone, Elias began to shake violently and mutter, "The stone must feed. The stone must feed." The prosecution was led by District Attorney Samuel Breed, a sharp man known for never losing a case. He opened the trial with a single sentence. Greater than, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Hartwell brothers turned their mill into a temple of death." The first witnesses were family members of the missing. Old Mrs. Caroline Brewer sobbed as she described how her son Thomas had vanished on his way to deliver oats. "He passed the Hartwell Mill just before sundown," she said. "Never came home." Then came the Phelps family. Young Timothy, now under guard for his safety, described what he'd seen the night he hid in the fog. He pointed straight at Josiah in court and said, "That's the man who dragged a dead body into the mill." Josiah only smiled. When Sheriff Wadsworth took the stand, the room fell silent. He told the jury about the bone chamber, the crushed teeth, the bloody chute, and the tally marks carved into the stone. Then he laid the wedding ring and broken pocket watch on the judge's table. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. But it was what came next that froze everyone in place. The sheriff brought in the journal. Found in a drawer under Josiah's bed, bound in leather and sealed with wax, it contained 142 pages of neat handwriting. Each entry detailed a grinding. No names, only numbers. Dates, ages, gender. Sometimes a brief description. No, 31, male, 52, broken ribs from prior injury. No, 39, child, female, blonde hair, fought violently. On page 78, one sentence read, "The powder is best when the bones are fresh. It sings in the gears." The judge, pale as chalk, ordered the courtroom cleared before continuing. That afternoon, a doctor from Yale testified. He had tested the leftover flour from Hartwell's sacks. It contained bone dust. Human. The audience wept. Some left. Others stayed, unable to look away from the horror. Josiah acted like none of it mattered. He asked to speak. "Do you deny these crimes?" The judge asked him. "No," Josiah replied. "But you misunderstand them." "Explain," said the judge. Josiah stood tall and said, "Greater than, we did not kill for pleasure. We fed something ancient, something older than this land. The stone does not just grind, it devours. And in return, it blesses." "Blesses how?" Josiah smiled. "Do you think it was coincidence that during our 20 years of operation, this town never starved? Never suffered drought or fire? Crops thrived. Wells stayed full. Babies were born strong. The mill gave life. By taking it." Someone in the gallery shouted. Josiah nodded. "Yes. That's the price." The courtroom erupted. Screams. Shouts. A woman fainted. The judge banged his gavel until silence returned. Elias was asked if he wanted to speak. He looked up once, then said softly, "It's still hungry." The jury took less than 2 hours to reach a verdict, guilty. The judge sentenced both men to death by hanging. The date was set, December 9, 1855. But the nightmare didn't end there. 2 nights before the execution, Elias was found dead in his cell. His head had been smashed in. No tools found. No signs of struggle. Just a pool of blood and a broken stone, a chunk from the Hartwell Mill, somehow inside the jail. The guards swore no one entered. The cell was locked. The stone had been dry when placed in evidence, but in the morning, it was slick with red. Josiah didn't weep, didn't ask questions. He simply said, "The stone took him back." On the morning of the hanging, hundreds gathered in the field outside the courthouse. The gallows stood tall. A cold wind blew. Josiah walked calmly to the noose. He turned to the crowd and shouted, "Greater than, you will starve without me. You will wither. You fed off our work, and now you will suffer the hunger." The hangman pulled the lever. Josiah dropped, but as his neck snapped, the sky darkened. A strange fog rolled in, just like the one that had covered the mill the night young Timothy had witnessed the crime. It wasn't natural. It was thick, too thick. People said they heard a sound in it, a grinding, deep and wet, like stones chewing through bone. 3 women miscarried that day. A newborn died before sunset. 3 cows were found dead in their fields, bones crushed from the inside. Millbrook was cursed, and the Hartwell Mill still stood, untouched. To be continued in part 5. Let me know when you're ready for the next part. The Hartwell Mill, part 5, The Silent Years. After Josiah Hartwell was hanged and Elias was found dead in his cell, the town of Millbrook wanted nothing more to do with the Hartwell name, or the mill. The building was sealed. The sheriff boarded up the doors. Local men stacked stones against the main entrance. The iron gears inside, still stained with blood, were locked in place with thick chains. A sign was nailed above the gate. Condemned by order of law, do not enter. And then, silence. For a while, the first few weeks after the execution, people spoke of strange things. Sounds from the woods. Whispers near the river. One man claimed he saw a red glow from the mill windows at night. Another swore he heard grinding, soft, slow, like something working in the dark. But life went on. Almost. Something had changed in Millbrook. The next harvest failed. Corn rotted before it ripened. Apples dropped early and turned black. The soil hardened. Wells dried one by one. The local preacher called it a test from God. The oldest farmers said the earth had gone sour. Then people began to leave. Families packed wagons and left the town. Some moved to Hartford, others to Vermont or Massachusetts. They said the land was cursed, that it smelled wrong, like metal and rot. Some claimed their children had nightmares about the mill, dreams of screams and bone dust. By 1860, Millbrook had shrunk to half its size. And the Hartwell Mill still stood. Untouched. In 1863, during the height of the Civil War, a group of Union soldiers camped near Millbrook on their way north. 3 of them were curious about the famous haunted mill. They never returned. Their captain found their bodies in the stream the next morning, faces pale, lungs full of stone dust. Their mouths stuffed with flour. One had his boots on the wrong feet. The other had a crushed jaw, but no sign of trauma. The town sealed the mill again. This time, with bricks. They poured concrete over the doors and hammered iron bars into the windows. A wooden cross was nailed to the front wall. The preacher led a prayer circle. They burned incense. They sang hymns. But the fog still came. Every winter, it rolled in thickest around the mill. It would cover the lower part of the valley, choking the riverbank and hiding the trees. You couldn't see 5 feet ahead. The air smelled like burning teeth. Some nights, travelers passing through would report hearing a stone grinding, very slow, very deep. By 1871, Millbrook was nearly gone. Only a few families remained. The rest were just empty houses and overgrown fences. The town looked like it was dying, and it was. No school, no blacksmith, no doctor. Just silence and memories. Then came Miss Clara Bell. She was a schoolteacher from Hartford. Tall, with sharp eyes and no patience for superstition. Clara came to Millbrook to write a book about the town's mass hysteria. She set up in the old mayor's house, brought her own supplies, and walked the town asking questions. She interviewed everyone, even the sheriff, now a frail old man with shaky hands and a Bible in his pocket. "You can board it up," he told her, "but the stone remembers. The stone feeds." She laughed. "It's just an old mill." Clara visited the building 3 times. The first, she only circled it, took notes, measured its size. The second time, she touched the walls. Said the stone felt warm. Unusual for November. The third time, she went inside. No one saw her go in. But they heard something. A long, slow screech. Like gears moving after years of silence. Then quiet. The next day, Clara's body was found at the edge of the river. Her notebook was soaked. Pages torn. On one page, the words, "Greater than, the stone is not a thing. It is a mouth. It remembers me." Her face was twisted, not in fear, but awe. She had smiled as she died. After Clara's death, the government stepped in. They declared the property unsafe. Fenced it off. Put up warning signs. "Do not trespass, unsafe structure." But the stories didn't stop. A dog wandered too close and returned with no eyes. A hunter vanished for 3 days, then stumbled back with gray hair and bleeding gums. A local girl had dreams of a man in black standing at the mill, grinding something in his bare hands. Still smiling, the town continued to decay. By 1890, Millbrook was officially removed from the Connecticut maps. But the Hartwell Mill still stood. One last note. In 1899, a railroad crew was hired to build new tracks near the area. They ignored the old stories. 5 men were sent to clear trees near the river and survey the land. Only one came back. He didn't speak for a week. When he finally did, he whispered just one thing. "Greater than." The mill opened its eye. They sent no one else. And the Hartwell Mill still stood. Waiting, watching, grinding. To be continued in Part 6. Let me know when you're ready for the next part. The Hartwell Mill, Part 6, The Return of the Dust. By the early 1900s, the town of Millbrook had become a ghost town. The houses were collapsed. The church bell had fallen from its tower. The roads were nothing more than overgrown trails through thorny brush. Nature had returned to claim the land, but the Hartwell Mill remained untouched. No vines crept up its walls. No moss grew on its stones. Even birds refused to land on its roof. People said it wasn't just haunted. It was alive. In 1907, a group of college students from Yale took a trip to Millbrook. They were part of a historical society looking into forgotten towns of New England. One of them, a boy named Matthew Greaves, was obsessed with the Hartwell story. He carried newspaper clippings, old maps, and a copy of Clara Bell's damaged notebook. "We'll be legends," he told his friends. "We'll be the first people to enter the mill in 50 years. They arrived in late autumn. The air was cold, the skies gray. Fog came early and stayed late. Still, they laughed as they made their way through the ruins of Millbrook, until they saw the mill. It was worse than they imagined. The building loomed like a giant head staring down at them. The windows were like black, empty eyes. The iron bars were twisted, as if something inside had pushed outward. They broke through a side wall with tools. One student, Henry, refused to go in. The others, Matthew, Eliza, Jonah, and Ben, stepped inside. They never came out. When authorities finally searched the mill, they found only Eliza's scarf near the staircase. It was soaked in flour. One word was stitched into the fabric in red thread. "Listen." Henry, the student who stayed behind, was questioned many times. He refused to speak, until years later in an asylum in New Haven. There, he would rock in his bed, whispering, "Greater than, the stone has lungs. It's still breathing. By 1915, Hartwell Mill had become the subject of myths, articles, and even a silent film called The Grinding Place, which was banned after its first showing when 2 people fainted in the theater. Locals didn't treat it like a ghost story. They treated it like a warning. Hunters wouldn't camp near it. Surveyors refused to map it. Even birds flew in wide circles around it. The trees nearest the building remained leafless year-round. Then came the dust again. It returned slowly, at first, just a light film over the riverbanks. Then it thickened. Travelers reported that it stung the skin, burned the eyes. One man coughed up blood and said it tasted like bone. Doctors blamed bad weather. Locals blamed the mill. But it wasn't just dust. It was what came with it. In 1921, a family passing through Millbrook tried to spend the night in the ruins. The father, Thomas Doyle, said he didn't believe in fairy tales. He laughed at the townspeople's warnings. The next morning, he ran into the nearest village barefoot, screaming. His wife, 2 sons, and daughter were gone. Forever. When asked what happened, he could only sob and say, "Greater than," the dust called them by name. It knew their names. He died 1 year later in a fire. No one could explain how it started. The only thing found in the ashes was a scorched piece of wood. Carved into it were the words, "Stone remembers. The mill never fell, no matter the storms, no matter the years. Lightning struck it once in 1933, splitting the roof, but the next day, the crack had vanished. People began to say it repaired itself. That it healed. In 1940, a group of military engineers tried to demolish it with dynamite as part of a training exercise. The charges went off. The earth shook. But the building remained. All that was destroyed were the trees around it. The blast cleared the area, but the stone walls of the mill didn't have a single crack. One of the soldiers began coughing up gray powder and died 2 days later. His autopsy revealed his lungs were full of flour. After that, the military sealed all records of the site. It was erased from maps once again. Still, the stories continued. In 1952, a preacher named Elijah Knox traveled from Georgia. He said God had given him a vision of a devil in a tower of grinding teeth. He arrived in Millbrook with a Bible, a wooden cross, and a dozen followers. They marched to the mill singing hymns. Only Elijah came back, burned, blind, and mumbling one phrase again and again. Greater than, it's not just a mill, it's a mouth. He died in a hospital in Bridgeport 2 weeks later. Nurses said his last words were, "The stones are waking." And still, the Hartwell Mill stood. Stronger than ever. Untouched by time. The wind never howled near it. The animals never approached it. And on some nights, if you listened closely, you could hear the faint, rhythmic sound of grinding. Not metal. Not stone. Bone. To be continued in part 7. Let me know when you'd like the next part. The Hartwell Mill, Part 7, The Letters of Abigail Stone. In the summer of 1964, a young woman named Abigail Stone inherited a small trunk from her great-aunt. Inside were yellowed papers, old church pins, and a sealed envelope marked, "Do not open until you are ready to hear the truth." Abigail opened it that night. Inside was a letter written in shaky handwriting. It began, "Greater than, dearest Abigail. There are things in our family that have been buried, but not forgotten. The Hartwell Mill still stands because it was never built to fall. You must understand. Your blood, and mine, come from those who once fed it." Abigail was confused, until she found the second item in the envelope. It was a small locket. Inside the locket was a miniature photo of a young woman with wide, fearful eyes. On the back, in faded pencil, it read, "Clara Bell 1852. Abigail had never heard of Clara Bell. She went to the town library and began searching the archives. What she found disturbed her. The Bell family once lived in Millbrook. Clara had vanished without a trace in 1852, during the mill's peak. And then came the real discovery: Clara Bell was Abigail's great-great-aunt." Abigail's curiosity grew into obsession. She found surviving pages of Clara's notebook, detailing strange occurrences at the mill, black dust, sudden disappearances, and the feeling of being watched by something inside the stone itself. Abigail began writing her own notes, following every clue she could find. She visited Millbrook in September. She should never have gone alone. The town was more ruins than buildings. Trees leaned like broken crosses. The church had caved in. The air had a strange, metallic taste. But worse than anything else was the silence. There were no birds, no wind, just the dry crunch of dead leaves underfoot. She reached the mill by noon. It looked exactly as described in every account: immense, untouched, and wrong. The walls seemed to breathe when she looked too long. The door was closed, sealed by rusted chains and a wooden beam. But something had left the beam cracked, as if something inside wanted out. She turned to leave. Then she heard it. "Abigail." A whisper. Not from outside. From the mill. She ran. Didn't look back. Drove through the night, heart racing, hands shaking. At home, she sealed away Clara's photo, burned her notes, and tried to forget. But dreams came. Dark, grinding dreams. She saw the stone turning. Gears made of bone. A river of ash. Clara reaching out with hollow eyes, whispering, "Don't feed it again." Abigail started sleepwalking. She woke up one morning with dust on her feet. Another morning, she found flour under her fingernails. Once, she woke up outside, holding the same old locket, even though she had hidden it under lock and key. Then she started writing letters. To strangers. To universities. To newspapers. She warned them not to go to Millbrook. She begged people to stay away from the Hartwell Mill. She said, "Greater than, it's not haunted. It's hungry." But no one listened. Most thought she was mad. Until the incident in 1965. A group of thrill-seekers tried to film a documentary at the mill. It was meant to be a student project about American legends. 7 students entered the building. Only the cameraman made it out. He couldn't speak. His tongue had been torn out, or ground. The film reel was recovered. It showed flashes of the inside. Gears turning by themselves, walls bleeding dust, a shadow crawling across the ceiling like smoke. And a voice, low, ancient, almost human. "Greater than, we fed the stone and it remembered our names." The footage was destroyed by authorities. But Abigail had already seen enough. She disappeared 6 months later. All that was left was a note on her bed. "It's waking up." After her disappearance, the land was purchased by a private company claiming to be preserving historic sites. They built a fence around the Hartwell Mill and installed cameras and warning signs. But every month, the dust returns. Every year, another person goes missing near Millbrook. No one lives within 5 miles of the place now. Locals call it the circle of hunger. The air tastes different inside that zone. Radios go silent. Watches stop. The trees grow crooked, as if bent away from the mill. Some say if you stand by the river at night, you can hear a woman whispering from beneath the stone. Greater than, I'm still here. But it's not me anymore. Abigail's letters were eventually published in a private collection titled The Dust Knows. Only 50 copies were made before it was banned by libraries due to disturbing content. One passage still haunts researchers to this day. Greater than, the mill is a mouth. It chews time. It swallows memory. Every life it takes becomes part of its shape. Every scream becomes part of its stone. Greater than, the Hartwells didn't build it. Greater than, they freed it. To be continued in Part 8. Let me know when you'd like the next part. The Hartwell Mill, Part 8, The Stone Beneath. In 1972, a team of underground surveyors was hired by the private company that had fenced off the Hartwell Mill. The company's reason was vague: structural analysis for preservation. But the truth was something else. The new owners wanted to know how deep the stone went. They suspected that the old mill was sitting on something ancient. Something not entirely natural. The team, 5 men and 1 woman, arrived with high-end tools and sensors. They weren't ghost hunters or thrill seekers. They were scientists. Calm, professional, logical. They didn't believe in curses or whispers. That changed on day 2. On the first day, they mapped the surface. All normal, except for the vibrations. Their instruments picked up a pulse beneath the earth, faint but steady, like a slow heartbeat. The readings showed the stone slab beneath the mill extended far deeper than expected, at least 300 feet down. That was unusual. Granite doesn't form that way. On day 2, they began drilling. 15 minutes in, the drill stopped. Not because of malfunction, because it melted. The bit came up hot and blackened. Not broken, not dull, melted. The geologist, Drive, Carla Vicks, said only one thing could cause that. Greater than, something is creating heat from below. But there's no volcanic activity here. That shouldn't be possible. Later that night, one team member wandered away from camp. They found him in the morning, barefoot, staring at the mill, whispering the same word over and over. Hollow, hollow, hollow. He never spoke again. The team wanted to leave. The company said no, so they tried again. On day 4, they lowered a seismic probe into a natural crack they found behind the mill's west wall. The sound it recorded has never been fully released. But according to the surviving technician, it wasn't natural. It wasn't water. It wasn't wind. It was a chant. Thousands of voices, low and grinding, repeating a word none of them could translate. Later, Drive, Vicks reviewed the sound file. Her hands trembled as she listened. She packed her things that night and left the project. She would later say, greater than, that was not an echo. That was a memory. Something down there remembers being fed. The last night of the survey, a storm rolled in. The mill's windows, long sealed and boarded up, began to rattle. The team saw shadows moving behind them, from the inside. One of the men, Travis, ran toward the building. He said someone was waving at him from the top floor. He didn't come back. The others watched in horror as the top window opened for the first time in over 100 years. And something leaned out. Not a person. Not quite. It was wearing a man's shape, but the proportions were wrong. The eyes glowed like coals. Its jaw opened too wide, and dust poured from its mouth like steam. Then, just before the window slammed shut, it whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. Open the floor. The next morning, the company arrived to shut the project down. The remaining team members refused to talk. They left quietly and signed non-disclosure agreements. But one of them, the sound technician, broke her silence years later. She said the stone beneath the mill wasn't just a foundation, it was a lid. A cover. For something buried long before settlers came to Millbrook. She said the carvings on the underside of the floor weren't millwork, they were warnings, written in symbols too old for modern language. She said they matched glyphs found in only 2 other places on Earth. A cave in Siberia sealed by a landslide 12,000 years ago. A black obelisk found beneath the ocean near the Mariana Trench. Both had been declared off-limits by the military. Rumors spread again. Locals began to speak in hushed tones about the thing beneath Millbrook. Animals avoided the area. The river near the mill dried to a thin, gray stream. No fish, no frogs, just stillness. A priest named Father Joseph Mahoney arrived in 1974. He had heard of Abigail Stone's letters and believed he could perform a blessing over the land. He didn't last the night. The church he set up near the old road was burned to the ground. No sign of forced entry. No footprints. Just ash. His rosary was found a week later, twisted into the shape of a spiral. A spiral that matched carvings beneath the mill floor. The final page of the technician's notes ended with a chilling line. Greater than, the stone doesn't keep evil in. It keeps us out. We're not supposed to look. We're not supposed to ask. But every generation forgets. And every time we remember, it grows stronger. Greater than, it's not asleep anymore. To be continued in Part 9. Let me know when you'd like the next part. The Hartwell Mill, Part 9, The Eyes in the Water. By the 1990s, the town of Millbrook was barely holding on. The jobs were gone. The river had dried. The younger people had moved away. Only the old, the stubborn, or the cursed remained. But the mill was still there. Still standing. Still watching. One summer, a group of teenagers broke into the fence late at night. Just a dare. They brought flashlights and beer. One had a camcorder. Only one came back. His name was Robbie Dunn. 17 years old. Star quarterback. Never spoke again after that night. The tape he recorded was found in his backpack. It showed the group laughing, joking, walking up to the building. Then the video turned shaky. The others were heard yelling his name. The last frame showed something horrifying. A pair of glowing red eyes reflecting in the water, but there was no water. There hadn't been for decades. A few months later, the Hartwell River began to rise. Not with clear spring water. With black, thick liquid, like oil mixed with ash. It didn't flow, it crawled. People called it, the returning. The animals left again. Then came the frogs. They appeared by the hundreds, silent and bloated, their eyes white and pupil-less. They surrounded the mill, and stared. Mayor Franklin Cole finally ordered the mill to be destroyed. Not preserved, not studied, wiped off the earth. A demolition team arrived with explosives. They drilled holes into the stone foundation. But every drill stopped working. Not from breaking, from freezing. Despite the summer heat, the foundation was ice cold to the touch. One man laid his hand against it and began to scream. His skin blistered like he'd touched acid. He died in the hospital that night, mumbling over and over. Greater than, the eye beneath, it saw me. After that, Mayor Cole went missing. His car was found at the riverbank. Empty. The keys still in the ignition. His shoes were found 10 feet away, facing the mill. His body was never recovered. Millbrook's population dropped below 300. The schools closed. The stores boarded up. The church bells stopped ringing. But the mill remained, unburned, undestroyed, unaged. It didn't rot like the rest of the town. Its stone stayed clean, sharp, almost new, and its windows were always dark. Until they weren't. In 1999, a new family moved into the edge of Millbrook. They hadn't heard the stories. Their youngest daughter, Lily, became fascinated with the mill. She drew it constantly, black towers, red eyes, rivers of bones. Her mother found her talking to the walls. When asked what she was doing, Lily replied, "Greater than, I'm listening. The people inside want to come back. They said I can help." That night, Lily disappeared. All the doors were locked. The windows sealed. The police found small footprints in the dust by the fireplace, leading inward. Like someone had walked into the wall and vanished. After that, the rest of the town gave up. No more searches. No more explanations. Just silence. The remaining families moved away. Houses were left to rot. Roads cracked and split. Trees grew wild. By 2005, Millbrook was officially listed as a ghost town. But one building never fell. One structure never aged. The Hartwell Mill. In 2010, a paranormal group attempted a live broadcast from the site. They called it, "The Mill That Won't Die." The footage lasted 3 hours. The group joked, explored, and mocked the legends. Then something went wrong. At 2:13 a.m., the stream cut to black. For exactly 1 minute and 6 seconds, viewers saw nothing. Then the camera turned back on, facing one of the group members. Her eyes were gone, just empty, bleeding sockets. But she was still smiling. A voice, not hers, came through the audio. Greater than, every eye that watches feeds the hunger. Every story told keeps it alive. The stream ended. The group was never seen again. Their van was found near the old church ruins. Inside were 6 blindfolds and a note. "Don't look. Ever. A local librarian, James Redley, began documenting everything, every event, every report, every death. He wrote hundreds of pages. Called it the Hartwell Record. Then he too disappeared. His home burned down, but the fire never touched the pages. The last sentence in his notes. Greater than, it doesn't want worship. It wants witnesses. Greater than, and we gave it plenty. To be continued in Part 10, the final chapter. Let me know when you're ready for the conclusion. The Hartwell Mill, Part 10, The Last Witness. In 2023, a man named Noah Granger came to Millbrook. He wasn't a ghost hunter. Not a thrill seeker. Not a believer. He was a historian. He had read the Hartwell Record, the burned copy saved from the librarian's house. He didn't believe the stories, but he knew one thing. Greater than where there are this many secrets, there's always truth hidden inside. Noah brought equipment, cameras, heat sensors, motion detectors. He stayed in the only safe place, the old ranger's cabin, 5 miles from the mill. He made one promise to himself. Greater than, I won't enter the building. Just observe. That promise lasted 3 nights. The first night, his cameras showed strange activity. At 2:06 a.m., all sensors around the mill picked up movement, below ground. Something large, slow, circling. The riverbed, long dried up, began to steam. The second night, he set up a drone to fly over the roof. When it reached the top, the video cut out. When it returned to his cabin, the drone's blades were melted. Noah decided he needed to go closer. He told his recorder, greater than, just going to the front door. Not going inside. But at 2:13 a.m., the camera saw him walk inside. Noah never returned. Days later, hikers found his cabin empty. The footage was still recording. The last video was just 3 minutes long. It showed him walking through the mill's main floor. There were no lights, no sound. Then, suddenly, the whispering started. Soft, wet, like breath through water. The words were hard to hear. But some phrases came clear. Greater than, you came to watch. Greater than, you came to listen. Greater than, you came to stay. The video ends with Noah turning to the camera. He's smiling, but his eyes are pure black. Today, the Hartwell Mill still stands. No weather touches it. No trees grow too close. No animals come near. The building is always cold. Always quiet. Always waiting. The town of Millbrook no longer exists. It's just ruins now. Vines and bones. Silence and wind. But the mill remains. People who drive through say they feel something. Like they're being watched. Like something knows their name. Some hear footsteps in the woods. Some see glowing shapes in the windows. A few say they see children standing at the riverbank. Whispering. Calling. A YouTuber once tried to make a video titled, "Spending the Night in the Most Haunted Place in America." He posted it live. He had 2.1 million subscribers. The video started with laughter and jokes. He even taunted the mill, calling the legends cheap horror myths. 2 hours in, the stream went black. It came back 3 seconds later. Only now the camera was inside a basement. There were rows of people standing perfectly still, eyes wide open, lips sealed. One of them was the YouTuber. He wasn't speaking, but the voice that came through the stream was his. Only deeper. Inhuman. It said, greater than, now, you're all watching. And that's all it ever wanted. The stream ended. The channel was deleted. No backups remain, except one screenshot shared on Reddit. The caption said, they're not trapped in the building. The building is trapped in them. Some say Hartwell Mill was never a place. It was a vessel, a creation of something old. Something that feeds on attention, on stories, on fear. Every person who hears its tale gives it strength. Every eye that reads, every mouth that repeats. They become part of it. Not haunted by it, haunting for it. So if you're reading this now, you've seen too much. You know too much. You've helped it grow. You didn't mean to, but you've opened the door. And now you're part of the story too. Don't look at the walls tonight. Don't listen too closely when your house creaks. And whatever you do, don't dream of water. Because when you do, it dreams of you. Like, share, subscribe. Before it watches you back.